I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Welcome to Pegwarmers, I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, we're checking out the Ecto Glow Heroes Collector Set. This is a recent Hasbro, Pulse, and San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, I believe. It's not labeled as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, but it was available at San Diego Comic-Con. There is also an Ecto Glow Ecto 1 being produced, which I did pre-order also, but I have no idea when that's coming in. But these seemed like they were going to be hard to get, and then I guess they weren't, which is good. I don't really need rare stuff. I just want to be able to get the fun toys that I want to get. But this is a box set containing all 4 of the Real Ghostbusters in their Ecto Glow counterparts. This was a paint variant or a refresh of the team from pretty late in the run. If you're familiar at all with the Real Ghostbusters, it was a hit kids TV show based on a movie not necessarily made for kids. And it spawned a series of toys that lasted quite a while. And every year, or sometimes more than once a year, we got a Ghostbuster team in a new deco, or with new features. But many times it was the standard jumpsuit repainted, and Ecto Glow ones are very rare and hard to find, and so they've done reissues. Reissues in Ghostbusters is not unheard of. Back before COVID, we had the vintage figures put out. The original set, the original team, plus Slimer and Stay Puft, and a few other ghosts were released that way. I actually have some of them hanging up down here in the toy room. I have a pretty big Real Ghostbuster collection, but not a ton of it on display. I have, those guys up from the reissues hanging on the wall because they display really nice. I have a vintage Ghostbusters t-shirt that I wore as a kid. I have 2 firehouses stacked up over here. There used to be some guys displayed on top, but stuff got stacked up on top of it. I think I found the containment units that went with them, and that kind of wrecked that display. And it wasn't really a final display anyway. And then I also have a shelf with the Filmation Ghostbusters on it and some Mattel movie action figures of the Ghostbusters from Ghostbuster 1 and 2. But I don't really have my whole collection on display. Alright, so this set comes in a nice big box with some artwork on the front. The ghosts are displayed on the side. Photos on the back, and this cool cutout. This room protected by the Real Ghostbusters, which was very much a marketing type thing. And some of the other toys had cutouts like targets. Oh, it's got the Ghostbusters on this edge. So all the way around, pretty nice looking package. And then this will contain the 4 carded figures. Alright, so each figure comes carded in here, and they really do fill up the package with the Ghostbuster, their mask, their ghost, and the proton pack with that long stream on it. It really does fill up the space. The back of the package shows how the ghost packs work. It shows the cross-sell with the rest of the team, as well as a little cutout card for the Ghostbuster, which is kind of fun. The original Ecto Glow team also included Lois Tully, who was kind of added around the time of Ghostbusters 2 to the lineup of figures based on the cartoon. He got his own jumpsuit figure and a couple variations. I believe he's coming. I believe he will be coming. There was a cutout or silhouette of a Slimer and a Stay Puft that they have actually shown product of now. But the same kind of display marquee on Ghostbuster Day showed it looked like there will be a Lewis. So we've got Peter. We've got Egon. We've got Ray. And we have Winston. In the comments down below, let me know if you had any of the different Real Ghostbusters series a complete team. That concept blows my mind. As a kid, that was like an impossibility. I know there were kids that did, but I got Egon in his original jumpsuit, and then later I got a secondhand Ray in his original jumpsuit. But I got Peter and Ray and Winston all in the Fright Features versions because, I got into Ghostbusters and got the car and the firehouse and some ghosts, right? And Egon the first year for Christmas or my birthday or both or something, some combination, right? And then I'm asking for more stuff for the next holiday or the next year, however that rolls out, right? And at that point, it's hard to get the same suits. I could imagine a kid growing up having, 4 Ghostbusters from 4 different sublines, possibly. It was even tough with Ninja Turtles to get all the Turtles from one series. The original versions, the wacky actions, the, dressed up, sewer surfer, sewer samurai, whatever versions. Do you know what I'm talking about? These are some insanely bright figures with that glow-in-the-dark yellowish-white plastic, and then the color hits here. They have their names. Peter's got blue and green, which is probably more tame than Ray's pink and orange. Egon's got green and pink. And Winston's got blue and orange there. They come with a ghost, a packing ghost, which is one of my favorite things about the Kenner toy line. Every package was a battle in the pack. Most of these guys are sort of reused, like the Jail Jaw ghost that comes with Egon here. I got a glow-in-the-dark version of that ghost with the roleplay trap as a kid, and I think it came with Ray in the original release. The Rapper ghost here may have come with Peter originally. I can't be sure, but I definitely know Gulper ghost here came with the original Egon in like a yellowish plastic. That was my Slimer as a kid because I didn't have the big green ghost figure. Peter comes with a spider, though, and that is not a reuse of one of the ghosts from the original 4 releases. This spider came out in a later iteration of the team. Egon Spangler, although sometimes absent-minded, Egon Spangler is the scientific genius responsible for creating the wacky ghost-catching equipment in the Ghostbusters arsenal. When all hope seems lost, it's Egon who will discover a solution to save the day as well as the world. I'm starting with Egon here because he was my first and favorite Ghostbuster as a kid. This figure, of course, has 5 points of articulation, just like the Kenner Ghostbusters here, legs, shoulders, and head. I'm being pretty careful with him, but that head joint does not really seem like it wants to turn. It could be paint in there. It is moving a little bit. It's kind of getting easier to turn as I do it, but I didn't want to just twist real hard right away if the joint was frozen. I'm not sure if it's like flashing on the seam of the neck, rubbing in the socket, or paint, but it is starting to move a little bit. One thing that I notice is like the paint masks here don't paint his belt, right? Or they don't paint the straps, but the green stripe just kind of grows across it. That's kind of sloppy, but I do believe that is the way the original figures were. Just sort of like a lazy paint hit. But I do love they have the Tampo Ghostbuster logo on them. That was a cool feature to me as a kid. I loved the detail of that and the fact that they had their logo patch on their shoulder. Just sort of made them feel official to me as a kid. And then, of course, like I said, he has Egon written on his side there. So I can gear him up with a proton pack. This plugs into his back relatively easily. He has the neutrino wand, which can be clipped on to the backpack. This was always a little bit of a challenge as a kid. The design of these is a little tricky. There we go. Now his neutrino wand is attached there. Of course, you always have the stream sticking way up, which was kind of a pain as a kid. They couldn't walk into a building. They couldn't sit in the car. I kind of always wish that that was removable. But this is that original action feature. So I can also slide this over his arm. And now when I twist this little rod, the neutrino wand blasts at the ghost. The Ecto Glow guys have a very different stream. It's much more zigzaggy and loopy. Maybe that helps interact with the ghosts better. The original streams were just sort of like a stick, with a curve to it. But I don't know if this will allow me to actually grab this ghost and trap it in a way. Maybe that's kind of the point. These packs had obviously been around for a long time before the original Ecto Glows came out, and they kept this design even though the handles tended to break, or the clips on the back broke, or the streams broke off. It's kind of a silly thing. but it did function pretty well. And I guess I wasn't nervous about it as a kid because I didn't know they would break easily. And eventually I got annoyed with the stream on my original Egon and snapped it off. So that way he could store it on his back and not have it be blasting the sky all the time. So, like I said, he does come with the Ghost. It has a paint hit with the eyes, which is neat. I assume the original Ecto Glow pack-in Ghost came with those paint hits, but in the original lineup and like the Fright Features guys, the little translucent pack-in Ghost didn't have any paint on them. So Egon also comes with a mask, because if you put this in the dark and it glows, his face will be sort of blank. They give you a mask. I don't quite know what the point of that is, other than to make his head not disappear. I don't know if there is a story explanation to why they have the glowing faces, but that is kind of funny and kind of weird. But, you know, accurate to the vintage Ecto Glow. Winston Zeddemore has always been the most practical of the Ghostbusters, keeping his cool and relying on common sense under pressure. Winston is often the only voice of reason that keeps the Ghostbusters and their adventures from getting completely out of hand. I think Winston was the last Ghostbuster I got, when I got him as a Super Scary to finish my team of 4 Ghostbusters. I'm pretty sure he was my last one, and I can't be sure, but he might have been the last one I picked up as a collector of the vintage line. I'm not really sure why, but I feel like Peter was probably the most popular one and maybe kind of the easiest one to find. I noticed with his paint apps here, the way his paint masks work, it doesn't interfere with his belt, but his collar and his shirt do have the blue spray. It does not wrap around to the back of his collar, though. So again, I don't know if that's like a cost savings thing or super accurate to the vintage figure, but there's only sprays on his arm and leg that go around, not on his back. So again, he comes with the backpack. I'm not going to try clipping the wand on his back there because it's just hard to do. It definitely does seem like a different material, so hopefully these won't be as brittle, but I don't want to risk breaking them. Again, he's got that very wiggly proton stream. It kind of reminds me of a crazy straw you'd have as a kid. And of course his Ghost has that wriggly tail, so you could snake that on there pretty well. It's heavy. Ugh, that's hard to do. But you might also be able to use this to, like, if this Ghost is sitting on the table, you may also be able to sort of lasso him and drag him across the table, and that could be a fun play feature as well. Again, we got the paint apps on his eyes. Winston's got his patch. He's got Winston going down his leg and the bright colors. And then, of course, he also has that mask. So that way we can see his face in the dark. I think there was another set of Ghostbusters that came with masks, but they were more of like the Ghostbuster goggle style mask, like a technology mask, not like their own face. I still think this is funny. Next we're going with Ray, who was my second favorite Ghostbuster as a kid. I think that I just really loved his joy of ghostbusting in the cartoon show. He had the prank shop. He just always seemed like he was having a good time. It was really probably that Frank Welker voice, you know. He was awesome. Ray Stantz, overflowing with energy and enthusiasm. Ray Stantz has been the beating heart of the Ghostbusters. Since bust number 1, approaching the world of the supernatural with childlike curiosity, he never grows tired of chasing down and busting ghosts. It's what he lives for. One of the other funny things I heard, I was watching actually a YouTube video about the history of the Real Ghostbusters show, and they talked about how they brought in a consulting firm to try and help with the show when Slimer became really popular, and they kind of rebranded, they changed Janine's look, and there was a push at one point to drop Ray and just have a 3-person Ghostbuster team, and they felt like him being the fat Ghostbuster was kind of his weakest link. So once again, Ray's got the bright colors there, no real details picked out, like the belt and the straps. I wonder what that would be like if those weren't glow-in-the-dark, or if that's where they put the colors, instead of these random patches. So he's got his proton pack here. Again, another ziggly zaggly proton stream. I don't know how I would keep track of whose is whose later. The original set, they were different colors. That helped a little bit. And he's got the Gulper Ghost, who feels really dense and hard, because that original one was real rubbery. And the original one you could fit over a Ghostbuster's head. But I would be leery about scratching up the paint on this guy, doing it too much. I mean, I can put him on sideways, but to actually turn it so his face sticks out seems like a good chance that I'm going to rub the paint off of him. But that is kind of funny to be able to put him on his head, for the glow in the dark. Or we could pop that off and give him the Ray mask. The Ray and Winston masks are not all that different when you go to just look at them. They don't have a ton of detail when the details are soft and not super detailed, at a distance, just glancing at them. And it's mostly just that Winston's eyebrows are like triangular shaped, while Ray's are curved. So we've got Ray here. Ray was the only Ghostbuster I had two versions of as a kid. I had him both as the vintage version and as the Fright Features one. I liked the Fright Features one because he was wearing a jumpsuit that looked fairly much like a Ghostbuster jumpsuit, although it was unzipped partway with the Ghostbuster t-shirt under it. He had the goggles on his head, so he felt very connected to the movie, as opposed to the other Fright Features guys who didn't really have the tan jumpsuits on. Peter had like a life vest, it looked like to me as a kid, in that series. But I got a second-hand version of Ray that was in the regular jumpsuit, and really liked that, and enjoyed the fact that I had Ray and Egon as their original releases. Although I didn't have Ray's proton pack. He had to settle for the sillier proton pack weapon that didn't really have a backpack from the Fright Features guy. Last figure we have here is Peter Venkman with the Arachnid Ghost. A fast-talking natural leader, Peter Venkman could probably talk a ghost into busting itself. Peter's the man with the plan, and that plan is to take ghost busting to the national level, while he dreams of becoming a famous ghost hunting hero. There definitely were a lot of Peter-focused episodes. They like to have him kind of schmoozing and showing off and being arrogant. And I think that didn't help me like him. I mean, that is the character, right? And I get it. When you see Ghostbusters, that is his character. But as a kid, that was always a little bit of a turnoff to me. I enjoyed him and thought he was funny, but characters like Eric the Cavalier from Dungeons & Dragons and Pete Venkman always annoyed me a little bit, that they were too big for their britches. Alright, we've got Peter, and there's not a lot to say about him that's different. His name does go across his chest. I feel like the straps and the belt and stuff are less interfered. Egon's probably the one where it was the worst, where the paint mask doesn't work in real life, where the lines on his jumpsuit would be blocked by the other things he's wearing. Again, Pete's backpack has that jiggly, jaggly, zigzaggy neutron stream. The stream doesn't interact as well with his ghost, I don't think. It's like the shape of it, maybe. Although maybe it does. Could I hook this ghost in here somehow? Nah, it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, I don't see how that would work. There is sort of a hole in the bottom of the Arachnid's head, which makes me think it could, plug onto a guy, but it's a very small hole. And so even like Winston, who has sort of a smoother head, it doesn't really fit on him. So if that hole is anything other than, a plastic saving measure, I don't know how it interacts, but it may have been able to plug onto an accessory if this isn't its original, release. And like I said, a lot of times these packing ghosts would get re-released with other people. The Fright Features Peter's twin ghost could hang on his hook or go over his shoulders. The ghost that came with Winston from Fright Features could fit on his little sledgehammer-looking ghost-busting tool. So a lot of times there was some interactive elements with these guys, but I don't know what it is with the Arachnid. It doesn't seem like it works with the traditional Peter here. So, of course, Peter has the mask. I guess that is a nice attention to detail. I do remember that the original Pete figure had green eyes, and he does here. Always a little bit odd, though, just full green, because they don't have pupils. I remember thinking that was weird as a kid. I'm definitely excited to have the Ecto Glow Ghostbusters in my collection here. Would I still buy the vintage ones? Yeah, if I saw them cheap, but that's the only way I was going to get them anyway. I didn't imagine I'd ever own a set with their accessories. But I always thought there was a possibility I would find one of them, a loose figure without accessories at some point that maybe was in the price range I could afford. But I definitely don't. I'm not worried about getting them now, which is, bad for the collector market, but that's what reissues do sometimes. I am most excited about the Ecto one that they're releasing, though, because that is something new and something they never did before. And I kind of wish they were coming at the same time, because I think that would be more fun, but they're really staggering these Ecto Glow releases with Slimer and Stay Puft yet to come, and then that Louis Tully. So, I'm excited they did these. Did anybody else order these? Let me know in the comments down below. Did you have these as a kid? I was done with Real Ghostbusters before these came out. I don't think I even knew these came out ever until I was like an adult collector. I was aware of a bunch of the iterations, but not these guys. If you missed the 200th episode of Pegwarmers last week, go back and check it out. I went through a collection of G.I. Joe figures I purchased off of a friend from elementary school and talked about a few other friends from elementary school whose collections I have absorbed, all G.I. Joe centric in that episode. But it was fun to do that one. It's a pretty big milestone, so this is episode 201. And, we just keep plugging along, always looking for new ideas and new topics and new fun things to talk about toy collecting. Do me a favor, hit the like button, let YouTube know this is quality content. Share this video with a toy collecting friend. If you want to support the channel further, consider joining us on Patreon. But thanks for hanging on the peg with me.